everyone, and welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Gia and I do workouts and talk about strength training and sometimes forget my words. Anyways, today's video is going to be a little bit different. I'm going to share with you my life story and how I saw my mom after 14 years, 10 months and 23 days. Yes, I counted every single day. Okay, so grab your cup of tea and some tissue and let's get straight into it. This is gonna be one hell of a roller coaster. So let's go back to 1998. That's when I developed TB. It's a contagious disease and you can get it in kind of any limbs of the body. So I had it in my throat. And I remember at that time in Pakistan, we did go to hospital, but the situation in the wards was really bad. Like I remember there was like people coughing and there was people with cancer and like people sharing beds, and it was just, that's the only memory I have of the hospital in Pakistan when I went to visit. And because of that, my dad didn't want me getting treatment in Pakistan. It was just really bad. So dad had applied for me, my two sisters, my brother and my mum and himself to come to the UK on a medical visa to get me treatment. So everybody apart from me and dad were rejected because their objection was, you know, it's only for a medical reason and the dad can take the kids, or dad can take me and then mum can stay in Pakistan and look after the kids. That's what was agreed. And so me and my dad came to the UK on 7th of October 1998. I remember being told that I'm only going to the UK for 6 months, and at the time I was 6 weeks old. I was 6 years old and I was going to be 7 in 2 weeks. So my birthday's on the 13th of October and this is the 7th of October. So a week later I was going to turn 7. I remember the last memory I have of leaving Pakistan was on our staircase at home, saying goodbye to my mum, and I don't remember if I cried or not. I don't think I understood really what was happening. All I knew was I was going to London and I was going to get treatment and I'll be back home in 6 months. And I think when you're 7 years old or 6 years old, you don't really understand how long or how short 6 months is. So I wasn't too emotional. My auntie, so my dad's sister, is the one that helped us in Pakistan. So she's the one that helped us with the visa and, you know, everything that we needed to help us get from Pakistan to London. She came with us on the plane and I distinctly remember her not allowing me to sit on the plane seat. So I had a bit of a grudge, you know, at that young age. I wanted to sit on the plane seat. I've never been on the plane before at that time. You know, I'd never gone to London. We heard about London, so London. And then I'm finally going to London and this lady is not letting me sit on the window seat. Anyway, I think when we got to Heathrow, I remember she finally let me sit on the plane seat. And I remember looking down and there was like rows, like neat rows of houses, red houses, or was it the roofs were red, or like it was just neat lines. And I'd never seen neat lines of houses before because in Pakistan or Lahore, you don't have neat lines of anything. No offense. So we got to Heathrow and then we went to live with my auntie and my uncle in Greenford. My TB treatment started in Ealing Hospital. And then I think I went to Cromwell Hospital, which is like a private hospital. And the memories that I have from there are staying in hospital, not being able to go to the toilet for some reason. I think I was in isolation. And so the lady would bring in like the commode, the portable commode. I would sit on it and she'd have to wipe my butt. And I just felt so like horrible. She didn't say anything. Obviously the nurse wouldn't say anything, but you know, you don't want anyone wiping your butt, or not me anyway. And I remember dad used to bring me the white chocolate, the Milky Bar every single day. So when I had it the other day, it took me way back. I was like, oh, I used to have this every single day. That's probably what contributed to me losing like 14 of my teeth, but that's another story for another day. So 6 months had gone by and my treatment had gone well. They didn't operate on this. So they gave me the medicine and everything. They didn't operate on this. They wanted this to heal naturally. And so the nurse would come home. So they obviously discharged me. I'd stayed with my auntie and my uncle. The nurse would come home every single day and she would change the bandage. And it was, I still remember that feeling of, you know, taking the bandage off, cleaning it and then putting on a new one. And then we waited for another 6 months to see if the TB would return, but it didn't, thankfully. And then we did want to come home, but there was one more thing that we wanted to do, and that was watch the Millennium Dome open, and I think that opened on 31st of December 1999, and now it's called O2, but back then it was called the Millennium Dome. And we were like, you know, let's see that open, let's go visit it, and then we'll go back to Pakistan. That was the plan. But oh no. And I don't remember what happened, but we couldn't return to Pakistan for some reason. I think it was because we lost our passports. Or was that later on? But I was so young and I have lots of fragments of my memory that I can't remember. And so I think soon after I did start going primary school, because obviously you can't keep a child out of school, even though our situation was we were not really here on a permanent visa, we were here on a medical visa. But obviously back then, 20 years ago, the laws were quite different. School was not easy. Like, I would get picked on by other kids. They were like, oh my god, Gia doesn't have her mum, ha 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 ha. And I would get jealous of, you know, seeing other kids with their mums, and I would cry all the time for her because, you know, I went from having my mum all the time to not having my mum. And I would get triggered by everybody that was with their mum or with their families. And so I used to cry so much that I think after a couple of years, I needed to wear glasses because it had damaged my eyes so much, all that crying. I would also get jealous of girls going shopping with their mums. And whenever I saw that, it would just trigger me. I would just get so jealous. And I would be like, why is that not me? Why is my mum not here? And, you know, as a child, when you want your mum, it's quite difficult to explain to yourself why she's not here. That makes sense. I don't know if I'm making sense. And I think by 2005, we had lost our passports. I can't remember. Again, it's such a long time ago, and everything's just merged into one. So by 2005, we'd lost our passports and we couldn't return to Pakistan because we didn't have any paperwork. And so we saw a solicitor and he's like, you know, you guys have been here for about 7 years. There's like a 7-year humanitarian visa application or something that we could apply for. And he's like, why don't you apply for that and see how it goes? So we applied for that. And we didn't get that, it was rejected. And obviously all this time we're illegal because our medical visa's expired, we've lost our passports, we don't have any rights in the country, and so we're completely illegal. So by this time, me and Dad had moved to so many different places because my auntie had kicked us out because of, I don't remember, I think Dad used to stay out late and her husband was very controlling, and it was a very toxic environment to live, breathe and sleep and eat and poop in. And so, you know, we'd moved to box rooms and people's spare rooms, and we moved like 30 times. And then I moved primary school again, then I moved to a secondary school, then I moved to another secondary school. So there was a lot of instability, there was a lot of uprooting, there was a lot of there was no family dynamic in my life. And so all of these reasons are going to be what affect my disassociation, which I'm going to tell you about in a minute. So in 2011, we finally got our indefinite leave to remain, and it felt like such a relief. We were finally legal. We could finally go to Pakistan and come back safely and not be like stopped at the borders. We finally could live and breathe and just, you know, be like, okay, we're not illegal aliens anymore. It felt kind of nice. And, you know, before 2011, I think in 2007, we were living in a government assisted, actually it was just a regular flat. It was a house with like different rooms with bathrooms and toilets. And we used to receive like £35 of Sainsbury's vouchers towards food per person. And then our rent was paid for by the Home Office. And then every week we would go and give in our fingerprints at the Home Office to say that we were still in the country. And that happened for I think 4 years, and that's the time when I tried to commit suicide like 3 times, because, you know, that constant fear of, oh my god, they're gonna come and deport us at any minute. And then there was things going on at school, and I had really bad depression then, and I was missing mum, and Dad had mental health problems, and things were just not going right. And so mentally for me, I just wanted to end it all. I was done. I was so done with life. I was, you know, researching ways to go painlessly, and I'm not going to go into what I did, but I did attempt it like 3 times, and I'm so glad that it wasn't successful, and I'm so glad that I'm still here. So after we got indefinite leave to remain, we were, you know, we could apply for British passports, and we did. We went to the interview and we received our passports, I think after 2 weeks. We saw them and we couldn't stop looking at it because we had wanted this thing for so many years, and this was our freedom finally after all these years. And so every now and then I would open it and I would look at it just to make sure that it was real, because it did not feel real at all. And the first thing that we did with the passports is we booked tickets to go see Mum. We had to do it. It was such a long time coming. It'd been so many years. So we didn't tell anybody. It was just my dad knew, I knew, and my auntie knew, and that's it. Nobody else knew. We wanted it to be a complete surprise. And also, if things didn't go according to plan and we couldn't make it to Pakistan, we didn't want Mum and everybody else to be disappointed. And so by this time I already had dissociation, but I didn't know what it was. So we went to Heathrow, we got on the flight. It was a PIA flight with like lots of kids, and never went on PIA again. And we got to Pakistan, and you know, when you go pick up your luggage and then you pass security, then there's a lot of coolies that try and help you with your bag. They're like, you know, because they know you're from London and they think you're loaded, so they're like, yeah, let me help you with your luggage, but then in return they want money. And I was just like, oh, they're so helpful. But then I think my auntie had warned me, and she was like, you know, just be careful that they don't steal your luggage, and that, you know, if you can carry your own bags, then don't let them help you with your bags. So I was quite wary. But then my dad let them help us, and he was giving them money left, right and center. So I was like, all right then. And then we left the airport, and the smell, the sight, the ambiance, the whole environment was such a shock, because you have like hundreds of people waiting for their families, but they're just staring at you because they know you're a foreigner, you're a female, you're dressed differently. They probably think you're loaded even though you're not, and everyone's just staring at you, and it's just like, well, can somebody have like prepared me for this? And then the smells was a mixture of sweat, heat, food, and more sweat. And there was loads of people. Obviously, it's Pakistan, the population is like so we got there, and then my cousin had come, and then there was this guy with him that was helping us with the luggage, and I was like, oh, that's, you know, somebody else helping us with our luggage. And then my dad goes to me, so I think I asked my dad, I was like, who's that guy that's helping us with the luggage? He's like, that's your brother. I'm like, wait, what? That's my brother? That's so weird, because when I left Pakistan, he was like 3 years old. He looked completely different. He was a grown man with facial hair, and my heart was just like, oh my god, that's my brother, oh my god. Obviously I didn't say anything, I didn't freak out. You have to like control your emotions when you're amongst like thousands of people. You don't want to create a scene. But all this time, my emotions, I'm just trying to keep it together. I'm trying to not cry. I'm trying to like look at where I'm going and trying to seem normal. And yeah, all this time it doesn't feel real because I have derealization. So we get in the taxi. It's a dodgy ass taxi because as we get on the motorway, something from the back fell onto the motorway. It was like a bumper or something. And I freaked out. Also, there was no seatbelt, so I was just like reading my Ayatul Kursi and just praying that we got to see my mom before something happened. The driver didn't even notice, or like he saw and he was just like, he just kept on driving, and I was like, I was SHITTING myself a lot by this time. And it wasn't even a short drive from the airport to Lahore. I think it was like, I don't know, maybe like an hour or two. I can't remember, it was such a long time ago. But the roads from around the airport was really nice and like modern and smooth. And then as soon as you get a little bit away from the airport, that's when the real Pakistan hits you. Oh, I don't know if we go straight from the Islamabad airport. Was it Islamabad airport or Lahore airport? I don't know what airport it was. Maybe Lahore. I think it was Lahore airport. When you leave Lahore airport and you go into Lahore, then the reality, you know, you can see the reality of the road and the situation and the houses and the donkeys and the cows and everything. And it was a culture shock. Like, I was from this country, but because I'd been in London for like 14 years, I'd completely forgotten about the situation, and I was not prepared for this at all. I was just glad to be home, but it was just such a culture shock. Like, I was not prepared for this. Anyway, we get to outside, you know, where my mom and everyone lives, and I recognize the door because it's a big, fat, long iron door, and it's like, it's kind of not curved, like square curves. And it was the same, and I went and like banged on it as like hard as I could. Like, there was people watching, because when they know you're a foreigner or a female, they like to stare. And I was like, I don't care, I'm home, I'm finally home. And all this time my body is just literally shaking and I'm trying to keep it together. And I banged on the door, and then somebody came and opened it. I ran back up, and then I went up the stairs, and it was a lady, and this was my sister, and she was 6 months old when we left. She was a little baby, and now she's all grown up, and she's shorter than me, and she's like tiny, and I'm like, oh my god, this is my sister. And I started crying, and and I can barely see where I'm going. And she's like really skinny, and like, oh my god, I have a sister and I can finally like look at her and embrace her. And it was just like, oh my god, okay. And then my sister takes my hand and she takes me up the stairs, and then across, so I'm at the edge of the stairs, and then towards the other side there's a lady shorter than me, chunky, and you know, she looks familiar, like your heart knows it's somebody you know, but your brain is like, who is that? My brain was like, who is this? And then my heart's like, that's mom. And my heart's like, that's mom. And my head is like, who is this lady? And then I go and hug her, and I have like tears streaming down my face because I just had waited for this moment for like 14 years to finally see her again. So yeah, I was hugging her and I couldn't believe it was her, because I'd waited for this moment for like 14 years and it just did not feel real. I thought I was dreaming. I kept trying to like touch my arm just to make sure this, like, everything is real and it's not a dream. Just want to make sure, because you never know. And then I was just hugging her, I think, I don't know, for like 5 or 10 minutes. And then obviously dad came upstairs because he's gone to the local dargah. I think there was like a dargah next to our house. And then he'd come in and then he was hugging her, and I was so badly disassociated by this time that my whole body was shaking, and I just needed to like sit down and just like breathe, and just like my whole body was trembling, and like my inner child was in shock and so happy because she hadn't seen mom in 14 years, 10 months and 23 days. I literally counted down every single day. And then yeah, me and mom and dad and my sister Hafsa and my brother, my brother wasn't there. We all sat down, we were talking, and then I think after half an hour my sister came home, and she was like, I think, frustrated from university. She was just saying how her day was going. She was still walking up the stairs, not realizing we were there. She was just like letting go of her frustration. And then as soon as she came in, dad was the first person she saw, and the moment she saw him, she stopped breathing, and you could see her chest, her heart, her whole body started shaking, and she broke down in his arms, and we all started crying again because obviously you can never cry too much. And then they hugged, and then my brother was there, and then we finally, you know, sat down as a family one more time and just spoke. And I don't know what we talked about. I was just in such a daze. So we stayed for a month, and then we returned, and obviously returning was the hardest part because you got to say goodbye again. And when you say goodbye, it's like leaving behind a piece of your heart. And this is what it looked like when I came to the country. And you can see over here on the neck, the bandage. Don't know if you can see it, but that's me. And they had to shave off my head. They had to shave off my hair because I was getting spots. So, and then when my hair started growing back, it grew so long to my hips that I did not want to cut it because I was afraid they're gonna cut it for me. And so I never trimmed it, but anyway, I'm fine. I cut my hair now. And yeah, we returned to London. I think a couple of years after that, I started working in Primark, and I was living in a male hostel, and dad was in a bad way, and I was, you know, missing mum once more. It was like things were bad, and by this time my disassociation was really, really, really bad. Like, so disassociation is when the brain is disconnected from the body, not physically but literally, because when you go through multiple traumas like I have, there comes a time when it's too much for your brain, and that's when it kind of puts a barrier, a see-through foggy barrier. It's like I'm looking at life from a second person. And that's when my disassociation started. I remember, because I felt like I was going crazy, you know, and I couldn't tell anyone about it. What was I going to say? Oh, I'm going crazy. They're going to be like, okay, you need to go get sectioned. I did not want to get sectioned, because when you get sectioned, your life is ruined. I'm sorry, but the mental health system in this country is just, it's not good at all. You come out either dead or worse off, and I wasn't going to let that happen. And so, you know, my depression at that time was super bad. Like, I did not want to get out of bed. I didn't want to open the curtains. I didn't want to do anything. I just wanted to sleep. I hated everyone. I hated life. I hated myself. I hated the situation I was in. I was done with life again. Fast forward, I think a year from that, I was working in Imperial College in the medical department, like medical records, and I had access to their library. And this is Imperial College, and they have a medical library with medical books. I was like, okay, let me go and see if I can find something, get a name for the symptoms that I'm feeling, because I need to know what it is that I've got, right? And so I remember, I think it was a big fat blue book, and it had the book of psychiatry or something, or there was definitely the word psychiatry on it. So I was like, okay, let's start with this. I went through, saw the word depersonalization, and it had the tiniest little 3 lines about it, and that's all I remember. And then when I read that, I was like, oh my goodness, this is describing the symptoms I have. I'm not crazy, I have this. From that, I went on Google and YouTube and did as much research as possible about what it is I've got, why have I got it, how can I live with it. And then after that, I wasn't so scared. But before that, before I knew what it was, I was so afraid, because when you don't know what you're facing, you get afraid. Fast forward, now it's 2021, so I've had depersonalization, derealization for 9 years now, so since 2012, and I managed with it so much better than I have before. Like, I know what's gonna trigger me, I know what's gonna stress me out, I know what's gonna make it worse, I know what's gonna make me go into a trance, and so I prevent that. Things like not enough sleep, not enough food, too much external stresses, something bad happening, like I know the signs to look out for. And that is the story of how I met my mom after 14 years, 10 months and 23 days, and my disassociation. If you've watched it to the end, it's a very long video. I am thankful if you've watched it all the way to the end. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. If there's anything you could take away from this video is, appreciate your parents. Like, if you have them and they're loving, like, look after them. And if you're someone that's grown up with a mother wound or a father wound, then feel free to reach out, and I'm more than happy to support you with whatever I can. And if you want any tips on how I've dealt with disassociation for like 9 years, let me know in the comments, and please feel free to ask me any questions. Thank you so much for watching if you watched it, and I'll see you in another video. Stay strong, stay healthy.